In this news roundup of the week for Friday, November the 7th, 2025, President Trump's threats to Venezuela and Nigeria provoke Russia and China to pitch in with warnings that they may respond if he goes through with it and attacks either of them. Separately, it seems finally to be sinking into the Trump team maybe they need allies after all. So the CIA director has been trying hard to persuade Europe they really can trust their intelligence with the US still. Honest? Tesla shareholders, in the meantime, have just voted an ultimate possible pay package for Elon Musk of $1 trillion, which, as you might expect, raises all sorts of questions about our modern age. Also, I answer a viewer's question and celebrate an old milestone, even though its achievement doesn't result in a massive financial payoff. So, let's jump straight in. One of the things we've learned in recent months that the peace president really loves to do is to blow up boats and kill their occupants as an exercise of extrajudicial killing. Now, obviously, it's all okay, because the very manly man's man Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, swears that it's only narco-terrorists who are getting killed, even if no evidence is provided that that's actually who they were, and even if drug smuggling isn't a capital crime in the United States anyway. Details, details, as they say. Bad people don't get due process. It says so in the Constitution. Probably. At least it should. One day soon it will. Senators in Congress seem somewhat concerned about it all. So this week, the top guns, Secretary of State Marco Rubio and aforementioned manly man's man Pete Hegseth, delivered a confidential briefing. They did this because the Senate was about to hold a vote on a measure that would curtail President Trump's ability to take direct military action against Venezuela. The quantity and firepower of American military forces amassing in that area has been steadily increasing. Indeed, the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford, described as the most lethal combat platform in the world, is on the way to the scene, to arrive within striking distance by Monday. So there is naturally some speculation about what happens next. Both Democrats and Republicans had expressed concern about the situation. Apparently, the classified memo that was shared with Congress in the briefing outlining the legal argument for the strikes somehow failed to set those concerns to rest. The top Democrat on the Foreign Affairs Committee told journalists after the briefing, "There's nothing that was said that changed my mind that they are making illegal strikes." And the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, Jim Himes, said the meeting didn't include the granularity typical of debriefs he'd attended in the past, which is a polite way of saying that they'd got a bunch of wishy-washy generalizations and no real actual information that was pertinent to the questions that they had. Members also complained that it remained completely unclear what it was the administration was actually trying to do, what its strategy was. This, of course, highly likely because Trump is making it up as he goes along, and there is no such thing as a strategy in place. I mean, we kind of know this, because people in his team have briefed it, saying that Trump, quote, has yet to make a decision about how or even whether to proceed. Some of Trump's advisors are reportedly pressing for an aggressive process designed to oust Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from power, because that's exactly the sort of thing that one expects that would-be Nobel Peace Prize winners would want to do in their spare time. Trump has claimed that all the boats blown up were ferrying cocaine and also, by the way, fentanyl. No evidence provided. Indeed, many have expressed skepticism that fentanyl is being transported in this location and in this manner, but of course it is the more lethal narcotic, so it enables the administration to claim that they have saved thousands of American lives in so doing. Generally, that sort of claim is nonsense, even when fentanyl is actually involved and has been taken out of circulation, because the numbers tend to be calculated on the basis of how many single event overdoses that quantity of fentanyl could theoretically bring about, and hence it's then said to have saved all those lives. Well, sure, if everyone who ever used fentanyl overdosed on it the first time they took it, that would be a meaningful number. But you probably then wouldn't need to worry about high demand for the drug in the first place. Well, it turns out that it's not only American senators and, unsurprisingly, Nicolas Maduro who are worried about what America is up to in Venezuela. Russia has been asked by Maduro to help it with weapons that could be used to defend against an American attack. You might want to pause the video at this point to fully soak up the irony in that sentence. Sergei Rybakov, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister, said this: "The unjustified buildup of American forces in the southern Caribbean is creating a situation of heightened tension, and no one but the United States itself is to blame." Moscow suggested that it could provide Venezuela with the Oreshnik missiles, which have a range of just over 3,000 miles and are capable of travelling at hypersonic speeds. Now that matters, of course, because standard US defences on an aircraft carrier, say, are not yet able to reliably defend against an attack by hypersonic weapons. So far, Oreshnik missiles have been used just once in battle, when one was used to hit a factory in Ukraine. Trump did say last week that he was not planning attacks against Venezuelan territory, even admitted that he probably didn't have legal justification that would support such an attack. But then he said he'd never heard of Project 2025, which he's been implementing ever since, so nobody is much willing just to take his word for any of that. And the administration is reported to be seeking a separate legal opinion from the Justice Department that would provide exactly that needed legal cover without having to go through the tiresome business of asking Congress to authorize it. Well, no need to worry about that, because however inadequate the briefing may have been held to be, the measure that was put before the Senate to block action failed to pass by 49 to 51. Now, as we know, it's not only Venezuela that the peace president is threatening to invade. As we discussed earlier this week, it's also Nigeria, on the basis that Trump believes there is a genocide against Christians taking place there, and he asked Hegseth to come up with options to be able to go in and take out the perpetrators. That threat attracted the attention, in addition to the Nigerian government, obviously, of China. China has been positioned for some years as a strategic partner of Nigeria, as it has been throughout much of Africa, in fact. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Mao Ning told reporters this: "As a comprehensive strategic partner of Nigeria, China firmly supports the Nigerian government in leading its people on a development path that fits Nigeria's national realities. We oppose any country's interference in other countries' internal affairs under the pretext of religion and human rights. We oppose the wanton threat of sanctions and use of force." A number of Republicans didn't take kindly to this. For instance, Representative Riley Moore, who said this on social media: "China will not dictate our foreign policy to us, and we will not be lectured to by a communist autocracy that recently arrested 30 Christian pastors for their faith and throws ethnic minorities in concentration camps." So far, all of this is posturing. The equation would obviously change massively if Trump were actually to order American forces into action on the ground in either country. So far, I've been amongst those who are sceptical that he would launch an actual military assault in circumstances that don't permit a quick and limited in-and-out strike against a specific target. But seeking to put pressure onto opponents and to be the catalyst that makes maybe other things happen to their detriment, well, yes, that is absolutely his style. So, to be continued. Meanwhile, worth noting, that most advanced aircraft carrier of America's I mentioned, partly so far advanced because it carries a new electromagnetic aircraft launch system, EMALS, that enables it to catapult fully armed warplanes off the deck and into the air at speed. Well, China has just brought into service its own state-of-the-art aircraft carrier, the Fujian, which also happens to boast that exact same system. China has surpassed the US to have the largest navy in the world in terms of numbers of ships. The US still has more big ships, but the fusion is a reminder that can also change. Maybe it's the recognition of that fact that has been bringing home to the Trump administration that they may have set off a chain of consequences that they won't much enjoy when they hit home. Specifically, it apparently sunk in that many of Washington's former allies are seeing themselves as, well, former allies. CIA Director John Ratcliffe to the rescue. He has been quietly meeting with EU intelligence and military leaders to reassure them, reportedly, that the US remains committed to intelligence sharing and absolutely definitely 100% can still be trusted with their most sensitive secrets. And who would dare to doubt such a thing? Recognising that sudden and somewhat erratic policy shifts on Ukraine, such as pausing intelligence sharing and flooding their senior posts with pro-Putin Trump loyalists, this might not have inspired confidence. Ratcliffe has established regular liaisons to build that confidence or rebuild it, and to try to keep lines open. In a comment to Politico, the CIA said the meetings were to discuss, quote, the evolving threats that Russia and China pose to transatlantic security. It added, presumably in a petulant defensive tone of voice, any reporting that suggests concerns were raised that the US is not a reliable partner are false and disconnected from reality. Well, strictly, if we're going to talk about reality, we do know already that some security officials, for instance the heads of intelligence in the Netherlands, have explicitly stated in public that they have become more careful about what they share with America, given its politicization of intelligence. Still, it is just possible that with the realization, belated as it may be, that alienating allies may have negative consequences, and add to that the recent deals between the administration and Australia and several Asian countries on rare earth minerals, which Trump has suddenly realised he really needs, it could well be that the period where America was untrammelled purely in beast mode in every conversation with every partner, that is coming to a close. Sure, not willingly and not gracefully, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if Australia's status as a potential source of rare earths wasn't part of the reason why the AUKUS Security Pact, which had been put in doubt in recent months, got solidly reaffirmed, just as Trump and Anthony Albanese signed a minerals deal. It's fun to note that before rare earths became such a hot-button topic, Australia had been trying to organise a leaders' meeting ever since Trump took office, and they had been brushed off, treated as a very low priority indeed, widely perceived in Australia as a deliberate snub. Suddenly, Trump is standing side by side with him, waxing lyrical about how great their relationship is. So he said this: we've been long-time allies, and I would say there's never been anybody better. We fought wars together and we never had any doubts. As with all such Trump statements, you can substitute any or all of those words with blah, blah, blah. It will mean exactly the same thing. But it doesn't matter that Trump couldn't care much about these so-called allies. Geopolitics has always been driven by pragmatism, with alliances of convenience to varying depths. It's only because Trump didn't see the value of any of that, compared to using tariffs to individually bully every single country into an unequal relationship, that meant that we had a 9-month process where he had to learn some of the very, very basics about diplomacy and the purpose of it in the world. Well, Trump famously doesn't learn from experience, so nobody should expect allies to suddenly fall into line and be reassured that any of this is going to be an ongoing thing. Well, at least, however frustrating Trump finds his job becoming over the next few months, he will at least have all the money that he's been making from his various crypto scams, and maybe that will keep him happy. Well, if money can genuinely buy happiness, you would expect Elon Musk to be simply the happiest man in the world right now. He won the vote at Tesla's annual meeting to grant him an eye-watering $1 trillion pay package, because being a mere billionaire is just so yesterday. To be fair, he only qualifies for the full obscene amount if he hits all of a series of extremely ambitious targets for the company over the next decade. Specifically, Tesla needs to be valued at $8.5 trillion. He needs to have boosted earnings 24-fold to $400 billion, to have sold millions of robots and autonomous driving subscriptions. Until that milestone point in 10 years' time, Musk will not receive a salary or any bonuses. Now, I imagine that Tesla fondly hopes that this will encourage Elon Musk to stop doing the things that actively damage Tesla's performance and reputation, like shoving out a fire hose of far-right propaganda targeted at the elections in some of Tesla's key markets, and instead, focus on the business for 10 whole years. Well, it's a bold plan, one that is rooted in the idea that someone who did remarkable things in the past must now be able to deliver those remarkable things again in the future, no matter how unhinged his behaviour has become in the meantime. And that with a company that many hold to be overvalued already, because of the unrealistic expectations of what having Elon Musk as CEO will mean for the future. What this really does, of course, is to throw a very harsh spotlight indeed on the side-by-side existence of extraordinary wealth grabbed by a handful of mostly tech entrepreneurs and everyone else in America, who arguably used the elections this week to send the signal to the government that all those promises that have been made about jobs and affordability, they all still seem to be pending. There have been times in the past when such sentiments could easily have been countered by charges of jealousy or failing to value the contribution made by the wealth creators, the innovators, the entrepreneurs. At what point does that become too thin an argument? If Musk received that entire payoff, bearing in mind his existing wealth, he would be richer than all but the top 15 countries in terms of their annual GDP. If the United States is due to fall Roman Empire-like, as some would say was on the cards, it could well be that this moment with Elon Musk will be taken as one benchmark of the sheer decadence into which it had fallen. Meanwhile, everyone that's not Elon Musk, well, you better go out and get a normal job, a proper job. Here's the Trump administration's Labour Department with a bunch of posters seeking to inspire you to step up to the plate, do your bit, take part in the American dream. I have to say, those posters kind of remind me of something. Can't quite put my finger on what it is. Oh yes, that would be it. Well, good news for all clean-living white American men with Hollywood good looks. The new age, it's all over to you. All right, one quick question to answer that was asked ages ago, to be fair, for a Q&A by viewer Matthew Klein. When a propaganda machine gets as powerful as Fox News, how historically and or theoretically does this power get redistributed back to relatively normal policy debates? Also, I love your content. Will he, won't he, in my best impression of you, is a running bit in my household. Thanks for the question. I'm slightly startled to discover I'm contributing, even in a small way, to the cultural life in your household. But to come to the question, the problem now is that it's no longer just about Fox News. Because yes, Fox News was an early part of the process. It was a key part of the journey. But we've reached the point where it could disappear tomorrow and it wouldn't really matter. And that's because the end point has been reached where two significant parts of American society are wholly supported by completely different informational ecosystems. So things that one side takes wholly for granted and be demonstrably true may be completely unknown or known to be completely false by the other side. The challenge for Americans is to rediscover the part of their values that they used to hold in common, and to use those to rebuild shared experiences. Because right now you have one side seeking to beat the other, to subjugate them, not to reunite with them. Hence a lot of the public discourse is done in the spirit of provoking the other side. I mean, we all know about the owning the libs memes, to be celebrated with the same old clips of some people who are held to be suitably aberrant and awful, although I dare say they're not in real life, and what source of a goose is source of a gander. Hence, at some point in the last decade, for example, you had companies like Disney that used to be the teller of stories based on exactly those universal values. You got executives there going on record as going out of their way to throw gay characters into all the stories specifically in a way designed to infuriate the MAGA side. It wasn't just saying, how do we make content that appeals universally to everyone, picks up on big themes in ways that everyone, whoever they are, will value and feel a part of? Because that used to be the problem. It was a solvable problem. No, it was, we're fed up of being universal, we want to belong to this side, and we're going to stick a middle finger up to the other side. And those sorts of things then fed the Fox News viewers, reinforced their sense that all the institutions they valued now hated them and made them cheer when someone came along determined to tear all of those down. Now look, Disney and every other company can do what it wants. It's just an example of how every single thing in US life, including the things that used to be held in common, have become part of the polarization in some way. That will only change now when America becomes exhausted of the polarization. People react against it, start to seek out common purpose, or something provokes that as an outcome. And yes, it could be a civil war or whatever that would look like in the modern era. But it could be something else, an external threat that brings people together, a cathartic moment if MAGA goes full on fascism and people on both sides who refuse to cross that line combine together to pull it down. Maybe even a new third party that is led by people authentically speaking to that common purpose in a way that cuts through this horrible moment that we've ended up in. And a pushback against the polarizing social media sites, because they have now become so toxic, it's beyond comprehension that there won't be some sort of backlash, people voting with their feet or regulatory pushback in due course. But it's going to take something like that, I'm afraid. It's not going to be short term. It's not going to be that fashions simply change and people just stop watching Fox News and start tuning back into the same channels that they used to in the past. It's going to take a while. But it's something to bear in mind and to make sure that when you see them coming past you, you support the things that are about bringing people together, even if you're still very angry at some people. There won't be many of those in the next year or two, because there's this whole political experiment that's playing out, which is what we talk about every day on this channel. Speaking of this channel, as it is bearing down on 150,000 subscribers, I'm delighted to note that YouTube, clearly not exactly ahead of events in this instance, have finally sent me one of these to mark the 100,000 milestone. In celebration of this belated milestone, I will do a full Q&A video. So give me your questions, starting and ending with a blue heart emoji in the comments below so that I can pick them out. Patreon supporters, add your comments under this video on Patreon. So those questions, of course, get top priority in thanks for your support, without which the channel would never have made it this far. That's all for now. Have a great weekend.